to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you.
Good morning. Welcome along to NUFC Matters. It's a pre-recorded show with Ben Jacobs. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning. How are you?
Good to see you, mate. Yes, all bright and ready to go in what should be an exciting weekend for Newcastle fans, taking on Arsenal, league leaders at this moment in time. But as the show goes out a day later, may well be back in second place if Manchester City have beaten Leeds on Saturday. But from our perspective, a big game of the weekend. We'll come to that at the end of the show. As always, people want to know the ins and outs of potential transfers at Newcastle when Ben is on. And, already, Ben, we're seeing excitement building with Newcastle, not far off now, cementing a place in the Champions League. It's going to change the dimensions of the transfer window for Newcastle. And Eddie Howe probed a little bit in the press conference about it, with links to various players. He's keeping his feet well and truly on the ground. And until it is 100% certain that they're a Champions League, he's not getting carried away, is he?
No, he's not. And ultimately, Newcastle will be linked with a higher caliber of player if they qualify for the Champions League. But the reality is still the same, that you're part of a financial fair play cycle. And as a consequence, Newcastle can't just spend, and nor will they want to. And I've said before how when you have success so fast after being in a relegation battle, and that happened to my team, Leicester, as well, great escape to winning the Premier League. Newcastle looked like they might go down midway through one season, and now it looks like they're going to qualify for the Champions League. It affects the budget because you can't guarantee that this Champions League that looks like happening is going to be season on season from a financial planning point of view. So if you're Manchester City, when you start your season, in your books, you have a bottom line estimation or budget, and it will always be based on Champions League football. And that's been a problem for Chelsea as well, because they have been used to having Champions League football. So you start budgeting for it. Whereas Arsenal this season wouldn't have even budgeted for Champions League football. Why? Because they didn't have it last campaign. So the point of bringing that up is that Newcastle can't just spend millions and millions, and they won't want to either, because let's say they sign Cristiano Ronaldo, which they won't, by the way. So let's just end that one right now. Then the wage bill goes up, but also you introduce an individual into your relatively consistent and seemingly fair wage structure that suddenly is earning a star amount. And then how does Kieran Trippier react? How does Bruno react when he's trying to negotiate his new deal? How does even someone like Callum Wilson respond? And then if the following season, after the one that we will be starting in 2023-2024 takes place and you don't have Champions League football, you're either saddled with that or it causes some kind of friction, or you get Champions League again and everyone wants more and more and more and more. And then if the rug is ever pulled away, you're left in a very precarious position, which is effectively what's happened to Leicester. And there's a number of players there that are still basically on Premier League winning wages. And if they go down to the Championship, it becomes a problem. So that's where the prudence comes from. And that's where, if you were only talking financially, as stupid as it sounds, you'd rather go from in the bottom three to staying up to mid-table to Europa League to Champions League, because then you're able to stagger things and you're able to build something that is a little bit slower in progress. Whereas if you suddenly go from fighting relegation to Champions League football in one season, it can be problematic. And those of a slightly older generation may think back to Leeds under David O'Leary, when they suddenly shot up and spent left, right and centre, and then went down and ended up spending however many years in both the Championship and League One. And of course, when you sign that caliber of player, if it doesn't go according to plan, you have to understand the personality. So in a slightly less alarming scenario, what if Newcastle finish third? Bring someone in like Neymar, and then the following season, don't make Champions League. Neymar might turn around and say, well, I'm not interested anymore. I don't want to just be in the top 6 in the Premier League or the top half in the Premier League. No one at Newcastle does, of course, but that kind of player may say, I'm activating my you don't have Champions League exit clause. And once again, it creates a state of flux. And this is why Eddie Howe, I think, is being quite coy. Because if you look at Newcastle and we dare to project Champions League football next season, there's a fair few players that deserve a shot at still being in the starting 11. And then there is a counter argument of, could you sign 6 or 7? Because as good as the Newcastle squad is, can you get better? And that's where I think Eddie Howe has to understand, who does he want to bring in to kind of add to the dynamic? Where does he just want depth? And where is he prepared to maintain because the starting 11 players he's got are just good enough? So Pope, for example, is going to stay. And quite clearly, so is Trippier and Botman. And I think many would argue Schär as well. But there could be another elite centre-back that you replace Schär with. Byrne, I think, is the kind of player, as is Matt Targett, who would be replaced. And we've said many times that a left-back is probably one area where they need to strengthen, and still keep an eye on Kieran Tierney. And I think that that's a good example, really, in all of this, of where if you're really being brutal, which is so harsh because of the season that all of this squad have had, and you're saying, what if Newcastle had Real Madrid on a Champions League night and you had an ideal starting 11? How many players from the Southampton game would you replace? And that, again, is where you start saying, probably Byrne. What about Willock? You know, I think he's had a phenomenal season. But if you're really raising the bar to Champions League, do you bring someone into the centre of midfield in your 4-3-3? I think Bruno, Joe Linton are safe. I think Isak is safe. I don't think Gordon starts on a Champions League game. But again, huge potential, big fee, only just joined. I think Jacob Murphy is susceptible if, again, we're solely talking about a Champions League night. And then you look at the sort of bench, and that's the big area where I start to think, okay, a bit more is needed. Like, I'd love to see an Elliot Anderson brought on a Champions League night and shine, but you might say that you need someone with a little bit more experience or a bit more proven quality, and he continues to be on your bench and in and around the squad in the Premier League, playing a lot, developing a lot. But once again, you might need someone else for that big Champions League night. Dubravka might leave, so you might need a backup goalkeeper. And then there's a range of other players like Callum Wilson. How fit's he going to stay? Do you need to bring in some goals? So this is the headache, in my opinion, that Champions League doesn't just require 1 or 2 signings where Newcastle can improve, which is probably left back and creative-minded midfielder and maybe another forward. So then you'd maybe say 3. Champions League is depth. So you might need to add to the actual size of your squad as well. And this is why I think Newcastle may be in for a busy summer.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Ronaldo, Neymar, another one linked this week. I mean, we asked Liam Kennedy earlier in the week, is it really ever a genuine story when you see these people linked? And why do you think we see these kind of stories come out? Fans now don't believe it. You know, we look at it now as clickbait. We all probably feel in the same kind of, you know, vein as well, that, you know, somebody like that wouldn't benefit Newcastle. We couldn't afford them. I think, you know, Eddie was asked about it in the press conference. We certainly couldn't afford them. We couldn't afford their wages. We couldn't afford to buy them. So why do journalists and certain journalists link players like that with Newcastle?
Yeah, I think it's just whispers, can be agent talk. And obviously it depends on the outlet. And in essence, from my perspective, I try and go to all sides. So even if someone on the agent side says something that implies there might be a possibility, and clubs can be used for leverage, clubs can be used for clickbait. So it can be genuine information from a genuine source, but the actual source is purposefully putting out a club that they know are not going to come in, and it fuels the market. And therefore it gets run and it does the rounds. And then nobody's going to come out and outright deny it, because clubs don't tend to talk about their transfer business. So in essence, when you have that kind of cycle, it's going to find its way into the public domain, and some people are going to get sucked in by it. But if you go to all sides, and the danger of that is that you have to sit on the fence a bit more, because you might get two completely conflicting pieces of information and kind of have to frame your reporting around, on the one hand this, on the other hand that. But at least you got the full picture. And very rarely actually in transfers is there a full categorical black and white picture, because any suitor can come in at any time. There can always be a late twist. And this is unfortunately just the market. And the social media type audience, they want black and white. They want, who are we going to sign? You've told us the name. Why haven't we signed them? What's the fee? What's the contract length? Why isn't it done? And then you have the other side who want to almost live the story and understands that there might be some surprises in there. There might be a plot twist. But I think the links with Neymar and Ronaldo are down to the fact, if we take them one by one, Ronaldo's not particularly happy at Al Nassr. And the Saudi stay has always had an ability to exit pretty much at any point on Ronaldo's terms. And one of those exit clauses is for Champions League football. So naturally, because Newcastle are PIF owned and because Ronaldo is basically on a government-backed deal, people are presuming very cheaply that if Ronaldo wants out, Newcastle might be a possibility, because the Saudi government and PIF would both like to have Cristiano Ronaldo playing at Newcastle United. And the reality is that anybody, if Ronaldo was younger, if Ronaldo was cheaper, if Ronaldo was at his peak, would consider Ronaldo. But this is a different Ronaldo, a different age, and also would be a significant factor in changing the dynamic of the Newcastle United dressing room. And that's not what Eddie Howe wants. But in terms of the actual dynamics of it, if, and now we're just speculating, it ever happened, it would in likelihood be a loan from Al Nassr, funded by Al Nassr. And this is where there is a genuine opportunity potentially for a suitor if it's green lighted by both Al Nassr and the wider partners funding that particular deal at the moment. Because Ronaldo could be loaned somewhere with Al Nassr picking up the bill. But the only reason why Al Nassr would pick up the bill is because they're not really paying the bill. It's wider partners within Saudi Arabia that are funding this. And therefore, why are they going to allow a club to take Ronaldo off their hands on a loan deal unless it benefits them? And who's the only club within Saudi Arabia, outside of Saudi Arabia, that is likely to give benefit to Saudi tourism, to the Saudi government, still potentially to Al Nassr? It might well be Newcastle United. So as a consequence, there might be a way financially that kind of deal hypothetically could be done. But you go to Eddie Howe and you say, you can basically have Ronaldo for free on loan for one season. And I still think Eddie Howe would say no, because he doesn't want that type of player and he doesn't want that type of personality in his dressing room. So it's either going to be Yasser Al-Rumayyan saying, I just want him. And there's no indication, to my knowledge, that that is the PIF perspective, or it's going to be Eddie Howe and Amanda Staveley and the Rubin brothers and Newcastle collectively saying that he's not the right age, he's not the right personality, and he's not the right value to the football club. Because even though you might get shirt sales and even though it might not cost that much if it's a loan deal and Al Nassr are footing the bill, it's somebody that everyone's seen through his Manchester United exit that can rock the chemistry, rock the dynamic, and would expect at any club he joined to be playing in the big games. And I think that Eddie Howe will have the authority to put a roadblock on that. Neymar for me is a little bit more interesting because he hadn't wanted to leave PSG. And now the situation has changed a little bit. And PSG are in a transition where they're focusing on younger, they're focusing on French. And that isn't a blanket rule, but it is definitely a preference. They want to buy young and they want to buy French if they possibly can. And then you've got all these older stars. And we've seen with the Lionel Messi suspension for 2 weeks and we will see going forwards with other star names, if player power, if older stars start to create factions, start to be part of politics behind the scenes, PSG are going to take a far more no-nonsense approach, when perhaps in the past they've tolerated that kind of behavior. And Messi's been made an example of, and that's why he's had to come out and apologize. And Neymar always thought he'd stay at PSG. And last summer, I think it was clear that PSG were not going to sell. But now, I think he's picked up another injury and the situation has changed. There is a likelihood, again, that a loan deal is possible. And with him being younger, and with, again, that being a loan deal, you never know with that type of transfer. But is he a fit with Newcastle? And would he want to go and play at Newcastle? And I think the answer to both those questions is no. So it's very easy to link Newcastle with anybody. And it's very easy to forget about financial fair play. And it's very easy also to connect without that appreciation that even if Newcastle could afford these players, they don't want to be silly with their finances and risk it only being for one season. And I know that sounds really pessimistic, because hopefully you qualify for the Champions League and then you do it again and again and again. But I remember talking to Paul Barber in January, the Brighton CEO, and he said, if we make European football, we can't throw our model out the window, because if the next season we don't make European football, we've actually taken one step forwards and two steps back. And it'd be exactly the same for Newcastle. Even if they had the wages for a Neymar or Ronaldo, even if they had the fee to go out and get Victor Osimhen and pay 120 million, it's not just the money and it's not just the player. And I think too often fans take a player, take a club, take Champions League and say, it's a great fit, without thinking about the fee within your existing financial fair play or profit and sustainability cycle. But also on top of that, without thinking about all the side costs. So any signing like Neymar, Ronaldo, Messi, even on a free transfer, these type of signings, they don't just come if they're attached still to their club, and Messi obviously won't be, with the fee. It comes with agents' fees, it comes with bonuses, it comes with wages, it potentially comes with incentives that go up based on how many goals you score, how many matches you play, how well the team does. And once again, Mike Ashley, like him or loathe him, and the vast majority listening are loathe, did one thing, which was frustrating, but in hindsight, quite sensible. He kept the wage bill consistent, and he made sure that there weren't too many significantly higher earners. And Newcastle's wage bill, therefore, is nothing like the other teams around them. It's nowhere near Man City. It's nowhere near Arsenal. It's nowhere near Manchester United. It's nowhere near Liverpool. It's much closer to a Brighton. And to move, therefore, from that structure and model, which is very sustainable, very tight, very consistent, doesn't really cause much friction amongst players, to move from that to Champions League might mean, as I said before, adapting, paying a bit more. And they may have to do that internally with what they've got and externally with who they bring in. And this is where specifically Neymar, Ronaldo, Messi end up being out of Newcastle's ballpark, because with another name, you might say, okay, we'll pay them 150,000, 200,000 a week, whatever it takes. And we'll also increase Bruno to that level and a few others. And that is just normal. They're going to have to do that. The wage bill will go up, but the TV revenue is going up. Other costs are going up as well. But, you know, Messi or Neymar, they're 350,000 to 500,000 a week. So they'll be on double or triple. And if you like an Elliot Anderson, maybe even a 10 times difference between one and the other. And that's where you start to run into problems. And that's where you start to panic a little bit if the season after next season, you don't make Champions League football. So if Newcastle is sensible, they're still sticking to their 5-year plan. They're still making sure that their wage bill stays sustainable, and they're going slowly. And they're almost saying to this core, get us Champions League for the next 2 or 3 seasons. And then slowly we'll bring in stars, slowly we'll increase our wage bill. But if they do what Leicester did, which is win the Premier League, qualify for the Champions League, sign about 7 players, And then by the next season, there was about 4 or 5 new names in the starting 11, or certainly the squad. And not only was the chemistry gone, but then as soon as they were out of the Champions League, you started to panic a little bit about how they're going to move in the opposite direction. And luckily for Leicester, they were able to kind of sustain about a 4-season run where they were in Europe or they were challenging for Europe. But now they're really feeling it because they've not been able to spend too much this season. They put all their money into facilities and infrastructure. Financial fair play is tight. If they go down, there's 6 or 7 that they may have to get rid of because their wages are Premier League wages or European wages, and now they're paying the price for not being in the top half of the table or not being in European football. Newcastle need to make sure that they don't fall into that trap, which means that even though it's a best case scenario this season, and you've got Champions League football, as ridiculous as it sounds, financially speaking, you've got to constantly push for the worst case scenario, which means there's almost a battle between what Howe wants and what your chief financial officer is saying. And Howe is saying, let's buy now, we need this now, but he's obviously very amicable about it. And then you got your financial officer probably saying, Eddie, the budget was always X for next season because we weren't expecting this early. So you got to stick to our plan, because if you don't, then it's going to backfire potentially further down the line.
Tom Dixon just wants to know, where do you actually think Ronaldo will end up? I mean, he doesn't seem a very happy chap at the minute.
I think Ronaldo at the moment will stay at Al Nassr. And I think that once again, during the course of the summer, there'll be a desire to look around and see what he can get. And I think that was always the plan. So he does this season in Saudi Arabia. He's only had half a season there. And it's obviously going to take time to settle and understand the standard and also see whether or not anybody else comes. But the bottom line is that even if he had a team full of stars, and even if their fierce rivals Al Hilal did the same and bring in a load of stars, it doesn't mean much because you're still playing a full season at a level that maybe Ronaldo thinks that he's better than. And then add to that the fact that Al Nassr are second in the table and Al Ittihad are above them, and they lost recently to Al Hilal, which was a big defeat, and things are not necessarily going according to plan. And Ronaldo can score all the goals in the world in Saudi Arabia, but it won't mean much if he's not happy with his football team and happy with the club that he's at and the ambition that they're showing. So quite clearly, if any of Europe's elite happen to come along and say to Cristiano Ronaldo, come and join us, Ronaldo would say, yes, I would jump at that opportunity. I still think he thinks that this is a stopgap on the football side. So by that, I mean, the whole project is much broader than just football. So Ronaldo is invested in it because he wants to grow, or at least he says he wants to grow football in Saudi Arabia. He's part of tourism promotion. There's government aims here that Ronaldo is part of, and they extend far beyond just football. So he can earn well, he can get money for life after football, he can be part of a variety of activations, he can sell his image rights, all of which can continue even if he stops playing for Al Nassr. But the bottom line is that if any club with Champions League football came calling, Ronaldo would probably bolt from Saudi Arabia. So he will assess his options over the course of the summer. But he's at a disadvantage compared to, say, a Messi because he's around 2 years older. So now he's 38. And if he joins somebody, they're only going to sign him over the summer if they think they're going to get at least a full season out of him, which means that during the course of that season at the midway point, he'll be 39. And that's a problem for any team because year on year at this level, you start to just decline. And it's marginal, but that makes all the difference in the Premier League. So I don't see Ronaldo coming back to the Premier League. I don't think there's really a club that would take him unless he's prepared to drop a little bit in standard. You know, you might, in the same way that Brighton are signing James Milner, who's going to be a fantastic influence for them on and off the field. You might find that somebody out the blue just tries for Ronaldo. And we've seen this historically, you know, when Gaza, for example, ended up doing the rounds at a variety of clubs in the latter part of his career. That type of thing with a star name can happen. I mean, Leicester, remember, signed Roberto Mancini, which was an incredible signing for a few games. But I remember Gazza in particular, obviously made his name at Newcastle and then Tottenham Hotspur, and phenomenal for Lazio. Went to Rangers, still a very good player. But by the time he was at Middlesbrough, then Everton, and then it was a Burnley, and then a couple of other clubs. I mean, his last club was Boston United from memory. He only played a handful of games there, and he went to China as well. That's what I mean, you know. So Burnley could be an example. Like, it would be very amusing to people to think about it. But Ronaldo to Burnley, if that kind of club came in and Al Nassr were footing the bill, then does he just take it for the sake of it and want another season in the Premier League? I doubt it, because I think he's a different kind of personality to someone like Gazza at that point, who just woke up and wanted to play football anywhere, in a school car park, on a park, on a Saturday, on a Sunday, at midnight. That was just Gazza. That's not necessarily Ronaldo. He wants to very much, you know, play at an elite level and be laser focused. So I don't think there's really a Premier League opportunity for him. But I do think there will be other options. So whether that could be a Roma or Napoli, have always ruled him out, but we'll have to wait and see. Because remember, Ronaldo at Manchester United and the clubs that were vaguely interested were basically there, but realizing very quickly that they couldn't get a deal done, even if Ronaldo took a 25 to 30% pay cut. But imagine a scenario where it's a loan from Al Nassr because they want to keep the affiliation. They want to bring him back at some point. They want to keep him involved within the Saudi messaging. They want to still say he's an Al Nassr player. So if it's a loan, the whole financial dynamic could be different. So then suddenly all of these clubs that vaguely looked but couldn't get it done, Atleti, even though Simeone's denied it, Napoli, even though nothing was ever close, Sporting, even though Amorim put his foot down and said he didn't want the deal to be done because it would change the dynamic of the dressing room. Those kind of clubs could come back into the mix if they're alerted to the fact that it's a 6-month loan or a season loan, and Al Nassr are either paying all of the bill or most of the bill. So those are the clubs to watch. But I don't see a Premier League return simply because I think Ronaldo only comes back to the Premier League with European football, which means that you would therefore be looking at this season's top 6, because he's not going to go and join Spurs and play Europa Conference League. I only say Spurs because at the moment they're 7th. It obviously might be Villa, it might be Brighton, it could even still be Liverpool. But you look above that, he's not going to City, he's not going to Arsenal. I really don't think he's going to Newcastle. He's not going to Manchester United. He's not going to Liverpool. He's not going to Brighton. He's not going to Spurs. I don't think Emery would take him at Villa, but that's probably the most likely of the top 8. And then you go beyond that and you're like, Brentford are probably not going to want him in their style. Chelsea are not going to want him now, even though maybe Todd Boehly was vaguely interested about a year ago. So I can't find a Premier League club. And then all the other ones, with due respect to them, Ronaldo's not going to go to. He's not going to say, my dream is to go and live in Leicester and play 12 months. He's not going to say, I've always wanted to play for Wolves or Bournemouth because Gary O'Neill is my idol. That's not Ronaldo. That's Gazza's type of personality. So for me, it's some of the other European clubs I've mentioned, or he has to stay at Al Nassr for another season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up, but certainly won't be Newcastle. Reg James asked, any RAPHINA news? Newcastle linked heavily with him and people talking about £80 million bids, etc. But again, you know, it's pie in the sky until the season finishes, I think, for Newcastle. Any interest in RAPHINA?
Yeah, I think RAPHINA is one that Newcastle have looked at before. And obviously when he ended up moving originally from Leeds to Barcelona, there was that Chelsea and Arsenal interest. I think that Chelsea and Arsenal are still there, but Chelsea are going to have to wait and see what the new manager thinks. Most likely Mauricio Pochettino. That one is really advanced in terms of negotiations. And now Chelsea have got a bunch of players in that position. Arsenal are still ones to watch with RAPHINA. And I do think that there's something a bit more concrete around Newcastle and RAPHINA compared to the other names that we mentioned. And the reason for that is because we know that Newcastle United are looking in that position specifically. So RAPHINA is one example. Jack Harrison's another player that Newcastle have bid for historically. James Maddison is another one to look out for as well. And the challenge is really, this could turn into another Frenkie de Jong saga, in the sense that Barca need to sell. And if they are going to try and bring Messi back, they need to sell fast. And RAPHINA has been very hit and miss. Certainly hasn't lived up to his billing, having joined from Leeds United. Has shown flashes of brilliance, but has never really clicked in the same way. The return is actually quite like for like with Leeds. I think it was 11 goals in the Premier League in his last season in about 35 games. And I think he's played just over 30 games this season and has scored 7 goals. So he's played, he's been involved, he's chipped in with a few goals, but definitely hasn't had the wow factor comparative to the manner in which he moved. But if you ask the player, he wants to stay and fight for his place at Barcelona, much like de Jong said he wants to stay at Barcelona. So first of all, Barca will have to communicate to the player, we no longer want you, you're on the market, perhaps because they want to try and bring back Messi, or maybe they want to try and sign Bernardo Silva still, which is another long-running saga where we've heard a lot of Barca talk, but not much action in terms of agreeing any kind of fee or advancing that. So if Barcelona needs some money, I would say that somewhere in the region of £60 million could be a fee that they consider for RAPHINA. But it will all depend on the player ultimately and whether he's prepared to leave. And if it isn't RAPHINA, to get Messi back, they're going to have to sell other players. Frank Kessie is another one. But again, Barca say they don't want to sell him. Eric Garcia might go. Ferran Torres might go. Marcos Alonso might go. They're going to need 3 or 4 exits. So there is a window of opportunity. I still think that if RAPHINA becomes available on the market, Arsenal might be back because they were really seriously interested in him before Chelsea hijacked and agreed a fee, and then Barcelona came in and sort of usurped Chelsea. So they could be one to watch. But RAPHINA is not the same RAPHINA quite as he was at Leeds compared to now at Barcelona. So I don't think Newcastle can necessarily be discounted, but I also don't think that there's anything particularly advanced at this stage. I think they're doing their due diligence in the market. And this is kind of the period before the window opens where you would expect to look at 3 or 4 targets in the same position and develop a shortlist and assess who's available and look at the fees that may be involved and then make the decision. And that's all there is to it at this point. And we'll wait and see whether Newcastle will move. But it's definitely an area and a position where I think that Newcastle will look to strengthen. And as I say, if you look at the other Premier League clubs that might come in, Arsenal might be one that are back, but they haven't made any move at this point. Chelsea, the boat may have passed because they've just got so many people in that RAPHINA type position. So I suppose technically Ziyech could go, Pulisic could go. Sterling says he's staying, but you never really know. But Nkunku is coming in. They've got Mudryk and then a whole host of other players. There's still a question mark over Mount, who's a bit more versatile. But if you're RAPHINA, you're looking at Chelsea and you're saying, squad's massive. There's loads of players in or around my position or that can play in my position. Where's the game time going to come from? Who's the new manager? And they've got no European football. And obviously Newcastle and Arsenal will. So I'm not so sure about the Chelsea links. I'm still not that sure about the Newcastle links, but there's definitely a bit more substance to them comparative to the other names that we've spoken about so far on this show.
Yeah. Okay. Alex asks about DIABY, another name Newcastle constantly linked with, over the last 12 months. And the waiting game that we played for Botman, I think that's what encourages people that maybe we may be going for DIABY again in this window.
Yeah, DIABY is a strange one because every window it seems to be Moussa DIABY is off somewhere. And at the end of the day, Leverkusen have been able to not only hang on to him, but quell any kind of heavyweight financial offer. And the summer, I think, is the time when DIABY will go. 23, good age to move. And now has won about 10 caps, I think, for France and has played well over 150 games for Leverkusen. And this may be the time when finally we will actually see him on the move. So there's a few complications in all of this, I would say, because when we were back at last summer, a lot was down to Leverkusen playing hard ball and the price being quite high, certainly for Newcastle United. It wasn't as high as people reported. It wasn't 60 million plus add-ons, which was probably the top extreme. It was more 40 to 45 plus some bonuses and add-ons. So maybe Newcastle will have got him for 45 or 50 million if they'd have bid at that point in terms of an all-in package with preferable payment terms and a decent structure. Now I think the issue will be suitors for Newcastle United. And one to look out for is Manchester United, who were never really in the mix 12 months ago. And still Arsenal might also be in there as well. And they were another club that were always looking at DIABY. He was always there on a pretty long short list, but they never really made the move. And I think that DIABY quite clearly stressed he was just going to stay. And that was partially because Leverkusen told him, listen, we're not selling you on the cheap. We intend to keep you, stay for another season. And clubs will often say this to players. And then at the end of the season, if the right offer comes in, we won't stand in your way. And that's where I think we're at the moment. So we're hearing all kinds of clubs linked with DIABY. I think Newcastle's admiration for DIABY is long-standing. And I think if they could get DIABY at the right price, there'd be a very realistic possibility they move from admiration to something a bit more advanced. But I think that there's too many clubs in the mix here that are going to turn DIABY's head beyond only Newcastle. So one interesting one to look out for is actually PSG. And I'll kind of be intrigued by this one because you may remember earlier in the show, I said PSG's new philosophy is move away from stars, buy young, and where possible, buy French. Yeah. So there's two ticks there for DIABY. And also, of course, he's ex-PSG. So it wouldn't just be signing him, it would be bringing him back. And that is what interests me about the dynamic. From what DIABY knew of PSG to what he sees them doing now, is that of interest to him to go back there? And I don't know at this point. Hopefully I'll be able to find out either by the next show or by asking around over the coming months. But they're one name I keep hearing over and over again. Maybe he'll go back. Arsenal are still one to watch as well. Manchester United are a newer suitor. Some say Real Madrid. I'm not so sure, but there's a feeling again around Hazard being replaced. Is DIABY the one? So I think Newcastle will be boxed out here by too many other suitors that may turn DIABY's head, even though their admiration for DIABY dates all the way back to last summer, really. But yeah, for me, there's just something asking around that says that one won't happen.
Okay, that's fine. Last one, and it's a guy who is close to your heart as a Leicester fan, first and foremost. Maddison. Bonnie Lad on Twitter wanted to know anything on Maddison, Steve. I guess we still don't know which division Leicester are going to be playing in, so that's going to play a big part in this. Yeah,
I mean, I've said many times and for months now that I think Maddison goes during the summer. And it's funny how bring someone good news, you're the best journalist in the world. Bring someone bad news, you're the worst journalist in the world. And every time I told you in January and even last summer, I don't think Maddison will go until this coming summer, 2023, I would get hammered for it because Newcastle fans, other fans wanted Maddison. They thought Maddison was possible in January. They thought Maddison was possible last summer. And obviously we know that Newcastle tried as well. And when they tried, people start to think, we'll get him. And again, I said many times that it won't happen until summer of 2023. And that's not me saying, I told you so, because I'm sure you can find things where I thought one thing, I reported one thing, and it was wrong as well. But my point of raising that is now I'm saying Maddison will go this summer. And suddenly it's celebrated. But that's what I've said for the last year. So nothing's really changed in that respect, that James Maddison will go this summer. And I think the only thing that would have allowed for a new deal at Leicester is if Leicester had made European football. So that was always the possibility. We're not psychics, but at the beginning of last summer. If Leicester had got Europa League or better, then I think they stood a good chance of offering Maddison a new deal. Now I think it's a given that James Maddison will leave Leicester. And as you say, it just depends what division Leicester are in, because if they go down, there's a real opportunity to get a potentially cut price deal. But either way, Maddison will do what I've really always said and reported Maddison will do. He'll wait until the end of the season, so he knows exactly what he's dealing with in terms of what have I got next season. And then he'll factor that into his decision making. And still, Newcastle, Tottenham are the two suitors. And they have been for basically a year.
Yeah.
And I think with Newcastle's position, stable manager, stable dressing room, very likely Champions League football, they've got some edges over Tottenham. And a lot will depend on Tottenham's new manager. But Tottenham, London club, big wage bill, stadium, Maddison might be turned by that kind of lifestyle. And this is where players factor in not just the football side, but they might think longer term. And the advantage of Spurs is that generally they get European football season on season. So if Maddison likes the new manager, if he likes the squad, if he likes the direction of travel, which at the moment seems impossible to kind of embrace because Spurs are in chaos. But if he gets a clear sense of the direction of travel, he may say, in the long run, I'm going to earn well. It's London, Europe season on season. Things will go on the up from here. Whereas Newcastle, it's a more immediate perk of Champions League football next season, and I can demand a Champions League wage. So I think Newcastle stand a very realistic chance. I can see James Maddison loving being part of the Geordie culture. I think he'll look at Bruno and how immediately adopted he was into that culture, and he'll see when he plays Newcastle, that fan base, and he'll see the dressing room photos, and he'll know some players in there from the England setup. All of that will help. So right now, tentatively, I would say Newcastle have got the edge if they can agree the finances with Leicester. But it wouldn't surprise me, because Maddison won't decide now. He'll decide when he knows what he's got from a team. So the sooner Newcastle are mathematically Champions League, the sooner they can say definitely to Maddison, this is the pitch, this is the wage. And I think that will be a factor. And in fairness, I think he knows where Spurs stand. But what we don't know is there going to be a surprise suitor, a Manchester City, Liverpool, that type of club, even a Manchester United. They could come in a little bit later. So Newcastle will need to do two things. One, get Champions League. Two, move fast. And if they do that, they stand a very, very strong chance of landing Maddison. But make no mistake, Spurs will be there as well, because both of these clubs have been looking at the player for the best part of a year.
Okay, as we're pre-recording, this is on the day of the coronation. The king has arrived at Westminster Abbey, so I just need a quick prediction of you, because I'd hate to be the person that is responsible for you and me both missing a bit of history. So, quick prediction for the game against Arsenal.
I think Newcastle get something from the game. I really do. Arsenal are wobbling. They're not keeping clean sheets. Newcastle have got a bit of a free hit in many ways. I know if they lose the game, people will say Manchester United might move above us. Liverpool could edge a little bit closer. Brighton, of course, have got a game in hand, so they can't be discounted. But I really think Newcastle will get something from the game. And it's getting to the stage now with Newcastle where they don't have to win every game. They don't have to play great. They just have to limp over the line. And there can be scenarios, by the way, as we saw with Aston Villa, where Newcastle lose and rivals lose. And then it feels like a winning weekend. And nobody's going to care, to be perfectly honest with you, if Newcastle lose every single game, but still somehow, because of other results, end up in the top four. It's only about getting over the line now. Play good, play bad. Draw, lose. Everyone else draws or loses. So you've either gained a point or you've not lost anything, and there's one less game to play. That is all that matters. So I think Newcastle will draw against Arsenal, and I think it will be an absolutely superb point, because I think if they draw or even lose against Arsenal, get anything from Leeds, a point, and then take 4 points from Brighton or Leicester, I think come Chelsea in the final game of the season, that might be enough, because you've got to presume that Manchester United will drop something, and they showed that against Brighton. Liverpool, for me, might be the ones that win every game. But remember, there's a 6-point gap between those two teams, Newcastle and Liverpool. And Newcastle have got a game in hand. And even though Brighton are superb and have got one game in hand, even if they win that game in hand, they're on 58. Newcastle are on 65. And Brighton, after that, even if they win that one game in hand, will still only have 15 points remaining. They've got to go away at Arsenal. They've got to go away at Newcastle. They've got to play Manchester City. So I'll be staggered if Brighton finish above Newcastle, regardless of what Newcastle do. I could see Manchester United finishing above Newcastle, and Liverpool are the ones to watch. So what you got to do if you're Newcastle is you've got to go for a worst case scenario for me of saying Brighton and Spurs, in my opinion, will not finish above Newcastle. And it doesn't matter if Manchester United or Liverpool finish above Newcastle as long as both of them don't. So if you take Liverpool, they've played a game more, they're on 59 points, their goal difference is worse, and they've got 12 available points. So 71 is the target, but Newcastle's goal difference is better. So 71 will do, in my opinion. Because if Newcastle gets 71, then their goal difference might go down a little bit because they'll have taken 6 points, and let's just say they've lost the rest. So it's 2 wins for Newcastle United, or it's 6 points for Newcastle United. And then I think they are over the line because I just don't see Liverpool getting to 71 and surpassing Newcastle's goal difference. So I hate to say it, but they'll beat Leicester at home if they need to. And I think they'll win away at Chelsea if they need to. And I think they'll beat Brighton at home if they need to. And I think they'll take something from Leeds. And therefore, if you lose to Arsenal, it's not a disaster. But if you beat Arsenal, it pretty much gets the job done. So I think this will be 2-2. I think it'll be high scoring. I think Newcastle will score because Saliba ultimately is out and they're susceptible at the back. But I think that Arsenal responded really well against Chelsea. They've obviously got a lot to play for still. And I fancy Newcastle to not win, but get something out the game. And I think if they take a point against Arsenal, it will be an incredible point. And it will be a point that really takes them very, very close to securing Champions League football.
Well, for me, as I say, this is a pre-record. I personally think Newcastle will win 2-0. I think Manchester City, I mean, obviously the game will have been played now, so we're at a disadvantage. But I think Manchester City will have beaten Leeds, and if that's the case, psychologically, that means Arsenal have to come out and attack to regain their position at the top of the Premier League. And I think that makes them susceptible at the back. So I'm going 2-0 to Newcastle. Ben, absolutely brilliant to have you on. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on transfers. Look forward to having you on again soon, mate. Take care. And
look forward to it. Enjoy the coronation, everyone, or hope you enjoyed it if you're watching this in retrospect. All the best.
Take care, mate.
A big shout out to all our sponsors. Thanks to Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can order them from their website, mrvickies.co.uk, or by calling 01768 210 102. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video technology. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle. If you enjoy the show, please hit the little thumb under the video and like the video. Click share to share to your other social media, or subscribe. It's free and we do 7 shows a week. If you want to become a member, you can click join underneath this video. There are different packages to suit all different pockets. And if you want to become a cult member, then put your smartphone over the QR code. It'll take you straight there to the website, which is NUFCmatters.com. If you go in via the website, just click membership pack. What do you get for your money? You get a pen, you get a cup, you get a membership card and a scarf, and entry into the monthly draw. Don't forget, we are available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. And we also support the food bank on this show. NUFCfansfoodbank.co.uk is where you'll find the matchday bucket. You can make a virtual donation today. We've also got some events coming up over the next couple of months. An evening with Peter Beardsley at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets available from newcastlelegends.com, or go to Voucher and get a 40% discount. Our end of season due is the 27th of May, at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets are a tenner from NUFCmatters.com. An evening with Gavin Peacock takes place on July the 10th at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets from NUFCmatters.com for that event. And the following night, Gavin will be at the Tynemouth Surf Cafe. Go to their website for ticket information. We've got a vast range of t-shirts, merchandise and memorabilia available at our website. The Isaac t-shirt is doing well. Go to NUFCmatters.com to buy one today.